Okay, so we're speaking about those wings that allow us to fly. And of course, we're speaking about the spiritual wings of Ahava and Yira, love and fear, which really take every mitzvah that we do, and even the thoughts that are eventually united with action, which was the big theme of last week, to the heavens, to the highest of highs. Um, we are now going into the inner makings of the Benoni, which is the main character, especially of this chapter, yeah, chapter 16. And the Benoni not only has full control over his psyche, over his heart, over his feelings, but exercises tremendous efforts in order to not just act robotically, but really to put his whole heart and soul into it, and therefore to activate those wings. Right? That was the main theme, the wings of the love and the fear of God. And we're going now into the physicalities a little bit of it, or the anatomy of it, um, not just biological one, but also the physical one. I suggest let's just continue where we are here, as you mentioned, second paragraph from the top of the page, page 75. Does anyone want to read? Anyone?
I will.
Please. Thank you. Go for it.
However, the above mentioned fear and love that are in the intelligence of the brain and the recesses of the heart, the love and fear existing within the sphere of one's intellect are only a preface to the heart's emotions, are of an infinitely higher order than that of action. By virtue of their connection with the inner workings of the nephesh itself, they are neither related to nor are of the same stuff as the implements of action or the physical existence. They stand apart, and they cannot clothe themselves in the performance of the commandments to become their intelligence and vitality, as it were, to uplift them to soar upwards.
Right, maybe just one more paragraph here. As is the case,
As is the case with emotional experience that is revealed in the heart. The latter is not wholly spiritual, but rather an admixture involving the body and its mechanisms. Consequently, when someone loves God and this love becomes revealed in his heart as a true personal experience with the same passion that he has for the things of this world, when this love he performs a commandment, then it has wings to soar above the material world.
right. So what this is saying is that really nothing compares to an action that is performed with all of our heart and soul, with those wings that are activated. Especially an action that is a mitzvah, that is an action that really connects us with God, which is what the word, as we've said in the past, what the word mitzvah means, to connect. It connects us and God. And when that connection is done with our entire being, then there's really nothing that compares to that out of all of the pleasures of this world, as great as they may be, as celebrated as they may be. Now, I just want to add to this that it's just interesting to note that there, you may have picked up on it, but there seems to be seeming, at least, contradiction, because until not long ago we were speaking about how action is what counts most, and one should focus really on doing the action even if the emotions are not there. And here, the Tanya is saying that this is this feeling or this activation of the wings of love and fear. And I'm quoting here of are of an infinitely higher order than that of action. So, what's more important, action or love and fear? And that entire emotion and entire involvement of the heart and the soul in action. What trumps what? And obviously, the answer still remains action. Because at the end of the day, as we've so often said, we are what we do. But an action that is fueled by this love, by this heart, by this soul, is an action that is incomparable to any other action. Now, also, I would say that there's really no contradiction here, because if your love and fear are really have really been activated, if your love is so passionate, then it will inadvertently or even it will eventually lead to action. True love means that at the end of the day, you are acting upon that love. Otherwise, it's not true love. Same with any other emotion, certainly same with love and fear that come with those wings. If my emotions are authentic, then they don't remain just in the realm of the emotions. And therefore, yes, they may give us this supernal feeling and connection with God, but they still remain lower than action because without action, they are really naught. They don't mean much. So so there's really no contradiction. Maybe to fine tune that. Yes, our heart, our soul elevate us to no end. But if at the end of the day they don't lead us to action, then they're not worth anything. And therefore, they are not as valuable as action is. I think we know that in relationships, that my heart and my soul can be invested in a relationship, and I could love my spouse, I could love my friends, I could love my children as much as I want, my parents as much as I want. But if there's no action attached to it, then it doesn't mean much. Yes, that love might feel really real, and it might be real, it might be an activation of the wings, but still, if there's no action, it doesn't mean much because action is really the byproduct of all of this love. And if there isn't love, then you should still act. So so that's why there's really they go one in one. And by the way, this is connected to what the Tanya quoted before, a passage from the Talmud that says, "One who has good thoughts, his thoughts are united with action." It's not that they lead to action, but they are united with action. True love means unity with action. Without action, there's really no true love, as real as it may feel. So this is what this is saying. That's what I'm saying. I just wanted to clarify. So there's really no contradiction here. You know, I just want to, on a more maybe technical but Kabbalistic level, it's interesting because the quote that is used time and time again in the Talmud and Ethics of Our Fathers is "Ma'aseh wa ikar," which means the deed is the most important. And you see that idea in all sorts of forms. But if you go into the word ma'aseh, which is the word for deed in Hebrew, it's an interesting word because ma'aseh, yes, means action. But as the Talmud points out, as the Kabbalists also elaborate, ma'aseh means to need. Me'aseh, la'asot isa, we say to need dough. And what's interesting is that if you want your action to soar, like we just read here, then you have to knead it. Not need it N-E-E-D, I'm saying need it K-N-E-A-D, right? You have to, as if you were kneading challah. What does that mean? That again means that you want to activate those wings, the fear and the love. The more you need the action, the more elevating you will feel, and the more connection there will be with God. Yes, action is most important. And whether you feel like doing it or not, you should still do it. But if you needed your action, like you needed dough, if you really activate it, put your your whole heart and soul into it, then your ma'aseh is wholesome. Then it's at its highest level. And then because your ma'aseh that was me'useh, right? To just play on the Hebrew word, your action that was needed, K-N, not N-E, right? K-N. Your ma'aseh was needed with all your love, with all your fear, with all those wings, with all your heart, with all your soul. Then your action will also uh, create this connection that is not just one with God, but also is, as mentioned, incomparable to any other type of connection one may feel in this world. So in the word action, we find an illusion, a hint to what the Tanya is saying here, to this idea that yes, we have to act, but let's try to act with all of our heart and soul. That's the word ma'aseh.
Rabbi
Yes, please.
Sharona.
Yeah,
So,
Sharona. Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, we said you have to be careful when you're studying the Torah that you're not doing it for the right reasons. But I think you should just study the Torah and you'll learn that, and maybe the right reason will eventually, your heart and soul will eventually get into it. I think we should still do the actions
Right.
I- And even if your heart or maybe part of you isn't like, oh man, I don't want
Right.
to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to bake challah, but just doing it, and then maybe your heart and soul will get in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly why there's no contradiction. That if your feelings are not there and your ma'aseh is not me'useh, right? Then you should still do it. You should still do it, no doubt. And eventually, the repetition of the action, or maybe even doing the action once, will awaken those feelings, right? But um, the ideal is to have the whole package together. But there's no doubt about it. That's right. It's interesting just to go a little bit into this, but um, it says that when God gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai, we said we will do and we will listen. First, again, emphasis on action. Na'aseh v'nishma. That's why God chose to give the Torah to us and not to any of the other nations that He offered the Torah to. Because while the other nations were complaining, oh, we don't know if we can follow this commandment or that commandment. We, even without asking what commandments there are in the Torah, without opening the package, so to speak, we said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. And after we said so, then the Talmud says that God took the mountain, Mount Sinai, uprooted it, and put it above our heads. And he said to us, if you accept the Torah, great. Then I'll give it to you soon. If not, then I'll make this mountain fall on you, and you'll all be crushed underneath it. Kafalem har kegigit, as the Talmud says. Now, you may ask the question, first of all, God, we already accepted the Torah, so why are you threatening us here? And secondly, is this the way really to engage in a relationship? I mean, does anyone get married by saying to their spouse, if you don't get married to me, I'll kill you? What is this? Even if they accepted the marriage, especially if they accepted the marriage upon themselves already. So what is happening here? And on a deeper level, as the Kabbalists explain, is that God was saying, okay, before you accepted the Torah because you felt like it. So you said, we will do and we will listen. Your wings were activated. But what about if you don't feel like it? Well, you still accept the Torah. What about if it feels like you have a whole mountain over you and you feel forced into things and your heart is really not there? Will you still accept the Torah? That's what God's question was with this mountain hovering upon us. And he wanted to teach us, like you just said, Sharona, that yes, sometimes, life is not only highs. Sometimes there's lows. And lows not just in events, but lows even in the inner making of the human being, in our moods, in our feelings. And question is, we'll be able to dedicate ourselves to Torah, to Hashem Himself, to His deeds, even when it feels like the whole world is on top of us. So that's why God did this. So again, emphasizing that, yes, the ideal is to have Naaseh Nishma when we feel like we're on a spiritual high, when our emotions are there, and fine, great. But if not, even if it feels like the whole world is against you and you have mountains on top of you, you should still say yes. Yes, to deed. Good point.
And Rabbi, on the flip side,
Yes.
we get so many outs, on the flip side,
Mhm.
um, you said last week, if you're thinking of the mitzvah, that's even good enough. So it's like the love and the passion is coming in first there, and then the action is following.
Yeah. There's certainly a moment of transformation that occurs even if I just think of a mitzvah. Especially we spoke about that in the context of teshuvah. If I think of, oh God, gosh, I have to change my ways. I'm not in a good place. I know that I have to take upon myself this resolution, just that thought is transformative, and God counts it as a moment of transformation indeed. That's why, right? When someone gets married and says, in condition that I'm completely righteous, even though he's completely wicked, he's still married because he might have had that thought that transformed him at that moment into a completely righteous human being. But if I go back, if I don't do anything about that thought that was indeed transformative, then I'm still the same human being after all. you know, we see that in a different place. It's interesting. We're jumping here from Shavuot, the day of the receiving of the Torah, not to Purim. But let's go to the story of Purim, where Esther invites Haman, the Adolf Hitler of the day, really, if you think about this, to a meal with her and the king, King Achashverosh. And that's when she intended to tell Achashverosh that this evil man wants to murder me and my nation. But it's interesting because she had two meals. After the first meal with Haman and Achashverosh, it says that the Megillah, when we read it every year on Purim, it says that Haman came out of the meal, Sameach v'tuv lev, happy and good-hearted. Now, happy, I understand he was, happy and all proud of himself that the queen invited him to a meal. But good-hearted, what does that mean? How can Adolf Hitler be good-hearted? How does that happen? And the answer is, well, he was in the presence of Queen Esther. And being in the presence of a righteous woman may have caused him momentarily to be good-hearted. Just that impact of a meal with a holy woman created the shift of energy, not just without, but also within his own heart. And for a fleeting moment, he was good-hearted. That's the impact we can have, which, by the way, speaks volumes on so many other things. When you invite someone to learn Torah with you, to do a mitzvah with you, to have Shabbat dinner with, it doesn't matter what, but to experience a holy moment, it's a transformative experience, whether we know it or not. It even transforms the Hamans of the world. That's how incredible it is. So, yes, your thought, your 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 inner making can transform you through those hirurei tshuva, through those thoughts, through those teshuvah ideas, and yes, through the love and the fear and the wings that we activate, like we're speaking about here. But we have to do something about it. It's got to be followed by action again. Otherwise, it could be the highest feeling, the most transformative feelings, but it's fleeting. If you want to, I don't know, there used to be an expression for it, but they went out of business. I don't know if people still use it. But if you want a snapshot, that Kodak moment, you remember that expression? And then they went out of business. I don't know how you call it today. But if you wanna capture that holy moment, then you have to have deed attached to it. Otherwise, it doesn't mean much. Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yes.
this is Yun. I just wanna something reminds me about this related to this from one of Shuram from Rebbe about Torah study versus the mitzvah.
Mm.
That we know action is important and we do mitzvot, but by doing doing the Torah study, I remember Rebbe was saying that our wills also become aligned with the Hashem's wills. So rather than we're just doing the mitzvot because we have to, or um, like a attitude of a servant,
Mhm.
by doing the Torah study, our wills become aligned with the Hashem's will. That therefore we're kind of doing mitzvot like Hashem's would do. So
Right.
I just kind of remind.
So that certainly enhances that intention, and it sparks good feelings towards the mitzvah and activates those wings, for sure. Because if you think about this, like you just said, you're right. The main difference between Torah study and doing mitzvahs is that when I study the Torah, yes, my mind connects to God's mind, and there's a profound connection there. But when I do a mitzvah, my will is connecting to God's will. And there's no greater connection than the connection of wills, of desires. When I do what my beloved wants me to do, that it doesn't matter if I understand or if we can have a good intellectual conversation together. That's great. There's a connection there. But there's no deeper connection than my will connecting to my spouse's will, my friend's will, my beloved's will, and certainly God's will. God, that's what happens when we do a mitzvah. And that in of itself should give us the desire to do the mitzvah. But sometimes even that doesn't help. So you still have to do it. You know, yeah, not to deviate too much, but I may have, I think I did a long time ago, but I'll share it again since we're in the month of Elul, this month of returning, of Teshuvah. Um, and speaking of connection through action, particularly, we find that in a fascinating biblical story. I'll try to share it just in a brief moment. But this is a story of Palti ben Laish. And it's a story that really begins with King Saul, who became very jealous of King David, as the Tanakh recounts. And at one point, he wanted King David killed. And he tried to play a dirty game on him. And he said to him, "Hey, King David, he wasn't a king then. David, I'm going to send you to kill our enemies, the Philistines. And if you can kill 1,000 of them and bring me back their heads, then uh, I will I will finally accept you, and you might even become the next king." Now, his intention was to have David killed by the Philistines, and then he would get rid of his problem. But David was immensely successful. Um, and one of the conditions was also that King Saul told David that if you are successful, then I will give you my daughter Michal as your wife. Michal was one of the most beautiful women of the day, apparently. So David, it's not a king yet. David goes out to war, and not only does he kill 1,000, he kills 10,000 Philistines. And he comes back and he says to Saul, "Okay, I killed 10,000 of them, not just 1,000. Where's my wife, Michal? Where's your daughter?" And Saul says, "I'm so sorry. While you were at war, Michal got married to a man named Palti ben Laish." Now, the story was that Saul actually forced his daughter to marry Palti because he heard that David was being victorious, and he didn't want David as a son-in-law, he was his enemy. So he forced Palti. Now, Palti had a big dilemma because that night of the wedding, he knows that, yes, technically Michal is married to him, but she really belongs to another man. She was promised to David. So he says, "Can I touch her or can I not touch her?" "Yes, I got married. There must have been rabbis there. There must have been a ketubah there. But still, I don't feel like it's right." So that night when they got home, Palti took out his sword. He too was a warrior. He took out his sword and he plunged it in the middle of the bed. And he told Michal, "I know you think that we are married, but I'm still not allowed to touch you because you belong to another man. And if you try to roll over to my side of the bed, or if I try to roll over your side of the bed, then let the sword kill us." Now, Palti remained technically married like this for many, many, many months, some say many years. Now remember, Michal was one of the most gorgeous women, and the temptation must have been great. Certainly for Palti, and I'm sure for Michal too. But they never touched one another until finally David became the king, and Michal was able to marry David, and they became husband and wife. Now God saw Palti and his tremendous self-control that he said, "I'd like to add my name to Palti," and he added his name El to Palti, and from that moment onwards, Palti was called Palti El ben Laish. Now the big question is, if Palti knew that he couldn't touch her, couldn't touch Michal, why take his sword with such a dramatic act and and put it in the middle of the bed there? I mean, you're not going to touch her anyway. What's the idea? And the answer is, first of all, he wanted to, again, take that moment of inspiration and bring it down to this world, make a mark of it. Because he might have had an inspiration, but he understood exactly what the Tanya is saying here, that these feelings are fleeting. And if you don't translate them into action, then they might just go away and you'll remain the same person you were before. So Palti teaches us here that not only do you have to, again, snapshot those Kodak moments, but you also have to translate them into action. Do something about it. And if you can do something about it, that will ensure that that transformation endures. And then endures in a divine way that maybe God himself also will then come to us and say, I want to add my name to you. And your name will have the name El attached to it also. And if you already have the name El attached to it, say you're named after one of the angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and I'm sure God will find other ways to attach his name to you. But that's the idea, really. And it's very much connected to the theme of this month that, yes, this month is a month full of inspiration and we want to change and we want to return, really, to who we truly are and have our neshama in the driver's seat. But just feeling it, even activating those wings is not good enough. We have to take our own swords, our own actions, and fulfill them. And then the transformation will endure.